Welcome to Dadhammer, Bolters and Booze, where we discuss all things Warhammer while staying hydrated with an adult beverage. I am David the Warboss, and I'm joined by the most generic Space Marine in the Imperium, Mr. Medicae Steve. Steve, how we doing?
We're doing awesome, David. Kind of getting back on track here, getting back on our schedule. It's kind of
Yeah.
nice. I feel like we were a little thrown off there and just couldn't quite sync up like we have been. So yeah, man, looking forward to this episode and looking forward to an action-packed weekend, or at least a nice game tomorrow night, hopefully.
Yeah, Warhammer weekend. That's always
Yeah,
a
yeah.
fun thing to look forward to. Yeah, I hear you. It's getting back into the groove of recording, and my work schedule's been so hectic lately that I was getting your texts about all the news hitting the Warcom site and new stuff coming out. You're like, man, we're gonna have so much stuff to talk about, and I was so late because of my work schedule. I'm
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, what? so so I had a couple of things to go check up on, which was cool though, because there was a lot of news, and every now and then we have a slow news week, and
Mm-hmm.
we have plenty of other things to talk about, but it's always cool when there's a lot of news that hits and you can go back and forth with it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Contemporary issues.
very contemporary, world pressing issues. Like, well, this is the serious stuff that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Come here first for your news.
You'll be glad
This will
you did.
change your life. Yeah, well, I think so. I'm always glad.
Me too, buddy.
Well, we have got a great show once again, and this time jam-packed with news, tons of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about an update to our Dadhammer Combat Patrol League. That's a mouthful.
It is.
Dadhammer
It's a lot.
Combat Patrol League. Yeah. So the CP League, maybe
Mm-hmm.
CPL.
Sure.
Now we're getting too many acronyms. Um, but we're going to give you an update on that. We've had some happenings, even though it's not officially started. We were going to kick off October the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't signed up yet, you've got just a couple more days to get in on the action on our website, dadhammerpodcast.com, and you see the league entry there. You could sign up, and we'll post all the updates and everything. But we've got some players that have already started to put several games under their belt, and yeah, we started a little early, but that's okay. We're having a good time.
That's right.
And we'll also talk about the news of the Space Marine Codex reveal and all of its glory. There has also been a new product released or upcoming for pre-order called the Stormvault Skirmish Case, which is like a way to tote your miniatures around, the small band of miniatures anyway. And then finally, we'll end with the latest Pariah Nexus episode that just dropped fairly recently, and we'll give some impressions there. Thank you so much for listening to our show. As always, if you like what you're hearing, make sure to rate, follow, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen. And be sure to tell your friends, tell people about us, let them know that they've got a clean, wonderful podcast full of humor and dad humor. Is that really humor? That's still humor, technically.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, dad
PG
jokes
rated.
aplenty. Very PG. I'd say almost G at
Almost G.
sometimes. Yeah, I mean, because I got kids, and if I
Mm-hmm.
happen to be playing this podcast and they hear my voice, I don't want them to hear anything terrible.
No, definitely not.
I got a reputation of some kind. I don't know what that is, but I got to keep it.
Yeah, I gotta maintain a certain mystique around this house.
That's what it is. Very mysterious, Steve. Very mysterious. Well, you could also find us on our website, dadhammerpodcast.com, and on all social media sites, so be sure to check us out there. But first, we're going to start with the most important part of every Dadhammer podcast, and that is, what are we drinking? And Steve, I'm going to let you go first. What have you got in the cup tonight?
I'm stepping out of my normal. I'm drinking some red wine. Getting a little
so sophisticated.
Getting a little uppity here. If it helps, it's a Tennessee red wine. It's
Okay.
Arrington Vineyards.
Just
south of Nashville, but it's their antebellum wine, and it's actually aged in Tennessee whiskey barrels. So it's one of our favorites, and it was pot roast night. So first pot roast of the fall season. I was like, yeah, that's gonna go really good.
Wow. You have any leftovers? I might come over to your house. I mean,
We got plenty.
Okay, I'll bring some bread and
There
have
you
a
go.
pot roast sandwich.
Yeah, man.
That's really good. You ever that
Absolutely.
open face like pot
Oh,
roast sandwich, put gravy
yeah.
all over it?
Shoot, yeah. I may
Oh
go back
man,
and have
right.
to go warm something up now.
I know, a little late night snack.
Mm. Oh
Put
man,
you right to sleep.
it
Well,
would.
so drinking the wine, do you have like a
Yeah,
smoking
yeah.
jacket or anything like that
No,
on while you're no?
I do have a really, really groovy skeleton cup though. That's
Okay.
it's like it's a full skeleton holding the wine glass part on his head.
Oh, okay.
It's getting spooky season. It's good, man.
That's yeah, true. You're just in time for Halloween, and then
Yeah.
if even if not, there's whenever you play. I mean, we're nerds, and so when you have nerd stuff lying around, I mean, I got plenty of. I play Chaos Space Marines
Mm-hmm.
and orcs. I got skulls all over the place. So
Mm-hmm.
you just go with the skull glass. It just fits in. Well, good. I'm glad you're classing up our podcast a
Uh,
little bit with your
I'm
red
trying,
wine.
man. I'm trying really hard.
Well, the good news is I'm going to bring it right back down. So I've got the cocktail this evening,
Mm-hmm.
and I have. This is a very simple drink. It is. I looked this up. My wife got some recent Sweet Tea Vodka. I'd never heard of this,
Me either.
um, but she got some Sweet Tea Vodka and Limeade. And I looked this up, and there's a take on this. It's Sweet Tea
Mm-hmm.
Vodka and Lemonade, and that's called a John Daly. And if you're a golfer,
This is really
if you're even
hilarious.
if you're not a golfer, go look up John Daly, and this is the most redneck golfer that has ever played the game. Would show up in like cut off shorts and no shirt and hit golf balls off of beer cans at the driving
Yeah.
range. I mean, it's like if your alcoholic uncle played golf and was really good at it. That's
Yeah.
that's what it would look
The
like.
dude is almost a superhero.
Yeah, kind of. Well, I am drinking a version of that. So this is Sweet Tea Vodka and Limeade, and because that's very southern and redneck, I'm calling it. Normally in the South, for especially for our global listeners, we say "bless your heart," and "bless your
Mm-hmm.
heart" sometimes can mean really, oh, you're having a rough time,
Yep.
or it could also mean, oh, bless your heart, like
You're dumb. You're dumb as
yeah,
soup.
yeah. Yeah. Well, to put a Warhammer spin on this, and after watching Pariah Nexus and Space Marines and everything, I'm going to call this one "Bless Your Two Hearts"
It's
because
perfect.
they got a couple hearts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I always judge the reactions of my family whenever I reveal the name of my cocktail, and to see how long the silence lasts, right?
Then you know it's perfect.
Yeah, this one was pretty
Like
lengthy.
I
So
don't
I
get
was
it.
like, yeah. So I told my wife, like, okay, I'm gonna call this one. She's like, well, what about Bless Your Heart? And I said,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, wait a minute, Space Marine, Bless Your Two Hearts. And so I told my son, and like he was watching Fortnite on his phone or something,
Uh,
didn't even look up at me like that. That was the reaction. So
could
you
you
know,
just not nerd it up for one day, Dad?
no, it's impossible. Well,
Uh,
anyway, this is a really good, very refreshing
it
cocktail. We're
sounds good.
still technically in summer,
Mm-hmm.
so still a summery drink, and it is pretty good. It's very light, and I recommend it. If you don't have limeade, so 2 ounces sweet tea vodka, 1 ounce limeade, but really you can do whatever you want. It's the sweet tea vodka and a splash of either lemonade or limeade, or you could put in lemon juice, lime juice, and
Mm-hmm.
simple syrup. Anything that kind of gives that lemonade flavor
There
with
you
the
go.
sweet tea vodka. It's good.
Nice.
Well, I will enjoy my bless your two hearts. You enjoy your fancy red wine. Cheers and bottoms up, Steve.
Cheers, sir.
Well, let's first start out with the Dadhammer Combat Patrol League update, the CPL, as I'm now dubbing it.
The
So
DCPL.
oh, okay. Now wait a minute.
I know. I
Now it
know. I
sounds
took
like
it
a
too far.
utility company.
Or a
It's
law
like
firm.
we're a law firm. So the Combat Patrol League, and for those who have not followed this, we have started a Combat Patrol League, and it is not restricted to just local to Nashville, to the greater Nashville area. You can join from anywhere. We've got a scoreboard up for points around games played, whether or not you have your armies painted, did you face a unique opponent, and all of this is pulled from one of the latest issues of White Dwarf. It gave the structure for starting your own league. So if you haven't checked that out, we've got a review up on our site about starting your own. Really cool. But we did our own thing, and we
Mm-hmm.
had several signups. I think we're up to 12 total now, and we've already have several people that have begun playing. We've got a pretty close race at the top, not so much at the bottom,
No,
uh,
it's
because
it's looking
you
rough.
and I are down there.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a second. But we've got the three top players: Hayden, James, and Hudson, and they are at the very top. Really, really tight race. And I'll say, first of all, Steve, you and I are, I mean, the hosts of the league have yet to play a game. Now, to be fair,
To be
we
fair.
had played previous games in a
Mm-hmm.
separate league, and we've had so much fun that we want to start our own. So we've already played
Mm-hmm.
several games. But
Yeah.
to be fair, we just didn't want to take all those points and
Yeah,
put them into
no,
this. So
that's true.
we're gonna try to play tomorrow, but not a real good look when the when the hosts haven't played a game yet. But scheduling, and
Yeah,
we'll at
it
least get a
is.
couple of points on the board for playing a unique opponent,
Yeah.
technically, and having painted armies. So maybe
Yeah.
we'll get there. But anyway, Hayden is what I want to talk about mainly in this update. Hayden is playing Necrons, and he is holding the top spot with 10
Mm-hmm.
points, which is a good lead at this point. So hats off to Hayden. And Steve, what I wanted to do here for anybody, and this could apply to listeners that are thinking about starting their own league or maybe getting ready to play against Necron Force in Combat Patrol, maybe at home. So it doesn't necessarily apply just to this group that is playing in the league. But
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted to talk about is maybe some strategies. Hayden, everybody's coming after you now. We're gonna give some tips to go up against the
Yeah, that's right. You're
dreaded Necron force. And
oh.
Steve, I know I had played against you with as your Necron army. And
Mm-hmm.
so my impressions, and this is hopefully just to help anybody out that's getting ready to play
That's
Hayden
right.
or another Necron army in Combat Patrol, there really are a good balance. There's a good mix of range and melee. For anybody that has played Necrons before, you think of them as shooting and the reanimation protocols coming
Mm-hmm.
back to life and then shooting some more. But the Combat Patrol actually has a decent mix of melee. Of course, the melee is not amazing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty good. Um, yeah, and so when I played against you, Steve, maybe we'll start this with me talking
It's
about
pretty
how to
good.
prep to play against Necrons, and then you can come out and say, this is some strategies that you used on the offensive. So
Right.
I remember when I first started playing against you, a very scary
Mm-hmm.
model, the Doomstalker, and it's got some pretty good firepower, especially if you're playing an army that has a lot of
Yeah.
different troops in it. If you've got a lot of battle line, if you're playing orcs, for example, or even Thousand Sons when they've got
Mm-hmm.
the warriors out there. Um, just be careful because that Doomstalker's got a weapon where I think it gets like D6 plus one shots with a blast, so you're going to get that extra attack. And this thing's no joke. It will wipe out your force fairly
Yes.
quickly. So, my recommendation, especially if you're playing with multiple troops, units in your particular army going up against Necrons, number one, of course, make really good use of cover. So get that benefit of cover. Go for the +1, even if it's partial cover. You still get that +1. Get in terrain if
Mm-hmm.
that's available, but stay out of the way, especially turn one of that Doomstalker, and you don't want to you want to limit the number of shots from that guy as much as possible. And if you can, depending on how fast your army is, you really want to get into melee with that thing. I know these tips are nothing revolutionary, something that's a big shooty. I'm not giving anybody anything that they probably don't already know, but I thought it would be cool
That's
just
right.
because if anybody's going to go after Hayden in our Combat Patrol League and the
Uh-huh.
Necrons, this is something you want to think about. So get in there really close ASAP. But Steve, from your perspective, remember you went when you were using that Doomstalker to try to take out playing Chaos Space Marines. Any
Hmm.
particular tips for someone looking to roll Necrons?
Um, I'm going to tell you my tip would be, because I did the opposite and it didn't work out so well. But if you can get your Doomstalk, I kind of left him in the backfield a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I'll use it to pick off at long range, and that's good and all. However, it meant that I had a little more vulnerable units kind of out in front, i.e., the warriors and those scarabs. Um, so I think my biggest thing would be get that thing's gun in use as soon as possible. Try to get a good position, pick out the heavier armored stuff. Like I really should have gone after your Hellbrutes a little bit harder
Right.
with the Doomstalker in the first couple of turns. Really took some points and wounds off of those guys, because you can get the other uh, oh my gosh, the destroyers uh,
Mm-hmm.
into melee range pretty quick. Um, you can advance them, and I don't remember if you can charge. I think you can charge after an advance with those guys. They might have some special stratagem or something. I just can't remember. It's been a little bit.
Yeah, the
Um,
Scorpec destroyers had some serious melee attack
hmm.
power. I remember that, and I think that too, from a defensive standpoint, the combination of scarabs and destroyers I
Hmm.
thought was really good, because so if you're trying to defend against those and those scarabs are advancing up, the scarabs seem weak, but they're going to get in the way, especially of your
Yes.
melee units. So if you've got that Doomstalker sitting, and this applies to any army with a big tanky shooty thing in the
Hmm.
backfield, the scarabs are supposed to die quickly, but
That's right.
if nothing else, they slow down the advance of the enemy. That, again, from the opponent, you want to get into melee as quickly as you can with Necrons, as long as you have a reasonable melee force. You don't have
Hmm.
to have anything super powerful, but you want to get into melee as quick as you can with the bulk of that force. But if you're playing Necrons, your advantage is getting both the Scarabs and these Corpec destroyers up the field as quickly as you can to slow
Hmm.
everybody down, shoot them off the field with the big guns and the Necron warriors in the back. But again, you want to, from as an opponent, you want to get into cover and try to sneak your way up the board and hit everybody really hard with melee, or it's going to be a real short trip for you. And I think
Yeah,
most of Hayden's opponents have felt that.
because you want to keep your warriors alive as much as possible, because that's where your largest mass of models are going to be. They're the easiest ones to reanimate,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the Overlord, who has a resurrection orb, so they can reanimate even more. So putting them out right in the middle where they can get shot at really easy is a definite mistake. You want to save them.
Yeah.
You want to save them for your, control of your objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to keep at least, enough of them alive that you can keep reanimating them. Because if you wipe the unit out, you can't
That's it.
reanimate them anymore, and that's
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
that's a pretty good chunk of your force if you knock out those. I think it's 10 warriors, um, and they have good firepower. Uh, I think half have
Yeah.
a flare, and the other half have the Reaper.
Yeah,
So
it
there's a little
wasn't
bit of a
it
range
wasn't
thing,
like
but
it wasn't amazing,
no.
but I think what you have to be careful of, if you are a Necron player or going up against, is once the warriors and the destroyer, like those are the two main units. If you can
Hmm.
take out the heavy melee and start to make a dent in those warriors enough, you don't have to wipe the entire unit, because if you weaken them enough, the
Hmm.
number of shots and the damage is just not going to do much to the opposing force, and it's just you whittled them down so much. So the real goal would be to get back to that Doomstalker, but I think taking out the destroyers quickly and then
Hmm.
going straight after the warriors. But all this is easier said than done, because you got to get up the field before getting shot off. So
But they
um,
do battle shock easier than I thought they
yep.
should, and that
Mm-hmm.
that became we keep referring back to this one battle, but that's what actually cinched it for you.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have enough. Well, I had no OC left. I couldn't control the objective because I lost the battle shock, which was really strange considering they're eternal eternal warriors with no mental capacity to
Yeah,
be afraid.
and I think that we'll talk about the Pariah Nexus episode, but
Hmm.
maybe Hayden has just been inspired by the recent
Maybe.
show, and he's just using that energy to go into the probably not. I don't know. He's also probably got a really good strategy
He
that
probably does. Probably knows Necrons far better than I do.
most likely. And so anyway, props to Hayden. Good luck to everybody going up against Hayden and the Necrons. Hopefully these tips will help you. I'll put the disclaimer out there. If any of these tips and tricks make it worse for you, it is all Steve's idea. If it helps, totally my advice.
Yeah,
Just remember that.
I
Very
can get
important.
down with that. That's cool.
Okay, good. Well, good luck to all our players. Good luck to Hayden. Hopefully, you can continue to hold on to that top spot. But Steve and I are coming for you with our
That's
0
right.
points. We'll be there any day now. I promise.
Any day, sometime before Christmas.
Hopefully. Well, let's now move on to the news. We're going to talk first about the new Space Marine Codex reveal and a little bit of controversy on this one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, controversy is, whatever. It's just we're talking about toy soldiers here, but controversy in the Warhammer community. And let's first hit the good news. And I'll
Hmm.
say, well, not necessarily bad news, but just the cool news here. First, they showed off the book itself with the art. Yep, looks good, about what
Looks
you
really
expect
good.
for a Space Marine Codex. And then they showed off the limited edition. And I gotta say, Steve, I have been pretty harsh on the limited edition releases of the Codex and ninth edition, because it's basically, what if you looked at the cover of a Codex in ninth edition. The limited
Hmm.
version, all they did was like strip out. It's the same artwork, and they would just strip out the title at the bottom or something, and maybe change the border. I just felt lame for an extra 30
Right.
bucks. Super lame. Now, to be fair, looks a whole lot better. I still think it's not worth 30 bucks.
No.
However, this artwork it's almost got like a retro feel to me. Are
It's
you
pretty
seeing that?
amazing. Oh yeah, I'm looking at it now. That the librarian, that
Mm-hmm.
is really good. And and to be honest, I think I don't think that's a new image that's on the regular
No.
I
Yeah, I
think
don't think
I've
so.
seen that one before. But this is something I haven't seen, and it looks really good.
Yeah, but this is limited, right?
That's right.
This
It should
this
be.
has this has a limited edition feel
Hmm.
versus just the standard codex. So if I walk in with this book, it looks completely different. Just like with my Leviathan rulebook that I have for
Hmm.
10th edition that came in the box set, that looks completely different. That looks like a limited release or a special edition
Right.
versus the ninth edition versions of the codex that were limited. I, it just it's almost like, and we talked about this before with White Dwarf, when you get the off the shelf or out of the game store copy of White Dwarf, shout out Blackthorn Game Center. But
Right.
if you go and you get that, it's got the printing all over the title, White Dwarf. It says all the stuff on it. But if you get the subscription delivered to your house, it has a limited edition cover. Still the same artwork, but it just looks a little nicer. But you don't pay
Hmm.
anything extra for that, so I don't mind. This is going to most likely cost you 30 bucks extra. Is
Hmm.
it worth it? I mean, that's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I guess.
That's
But
right.
uh, it also depends on how deep your pockets are. Is this worth an
Hmm.
extra 30 bucks? To me, no. But if I'm a diehard Space Marine player, then, maybe, right? I
Yeah.
think this is a step in the right direction, personally.
Yeah, I like it. It's better, much better.
Yep. Yep. The other thing that was released, they showed off in a preview, and I'm going to skip around a little bit here. But as far as the timeline of events, they showed off the dice and data cards that are
Mm-hmm.
coming out, because they've got the models releasing. But they showed off the Space Marine dice, which I always like whenever they come out with a new army or a new codex. They have branded dice,
Mm-hmm.
and also the data sheet cards. So two things. One, I think these dice look super cool
They're
personally,
pretty nice.
and
I do like them.
I'm not an Ultramarine Space Marine player,
Mm-hmm.
but man, they're calling to me. I think
I
I just
love
think they look really cool.
the Angels of Death, wings and stuff. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
just
with the
fantastic.
skull and the sort.
Uh
Yeah,
huh.
it and I
It's
like the
very old
color
school.
with
Mm-hmm.
the I don't know what you call it, with the
Kind of
marbled look on
pearl
there.
white,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a
Yeah,
pearl, but they look like they'd be easy to see on the board.
yeah. Well, yeah, and especially for our age demographic, that's something
Gosh,
that's very important.
that's the truth, man.
But I think these dice are cool. I liked the Tyranid dice as well that they
Mm-hmm.
released, and I'll probably be picking up those. I might pick up these Space Marine dice just for the heck of it. I don't know,
Yeah.
but then I end up with too many dice. So is that a problem ever? Maybe,
I don't know
maybe
because I
not.
find myself sometimes running out of dice, and then I
No,
have to use
okay.
like the baby dice, and I get
Yeah,
really
that's no
sad about
fun.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit upset.
Well, the dice look cool, and then what I wanted to talk about, they showed off these data sheet cards for the Space
Yeah,
Marines. Is it just me, or do these look a whole lot smaller than the other ones that they released?
this looks like a different because the other ones were kind of in a landscape
Yeah,
sort of format
like big
box.
big note cards for
Uh
like
huh.
5x7 kind of thing.
These look like maybe large playing cards, or
Mm-hmm.
like, dare I say, like tarot cards size, or whatever
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
compare it to. But yeah, I'm interested to see how that worked because all the format, even all the free download stuff, was landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see
Well,
what they actually look like.
I also think that the downloads that you get, and even the larger cards, there is a lot of wasted space
Yeah, I agree.
on those cards. But not all, right? Some units are going to have a lot of text, a lot of abilities, a lot of
Hmm.
stats, and they have to use up all that space. These in particular, maybe not, but I don't know if I don't mind a portrait view if that's what these
No,
are.
that's
'Cause we have
fun.
yet to see what they look like, but I do have a bit of a conspiracy theory.
Oh no.
I wonder if they're going to make this view, those cards, very similar to the view in the app, which is portrait,
Oh.
to kind of
S-
keep those aligned, where they have the range and the
Yeah.
melee and abilities. I wonder if
Hmm.
they were to take the cards and almost expand out every single category.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that makes
So
total sense.
yeah, a little bit of conspiracy theory, but just based on the size of these cards, they do look smaller. Now,
Hmm.
maybe not. Maybe we just can't tell the difference between the size. But
No, I
um,
mean, if you judge it, if these are scaled the same with the dice sitting in
hmm
front of it, they're
they
not
look smaller.
big. They do
Yeah.
look smaller.
Well, we'll see. And then right below this picture on the site, they have the Leviathan mission deck, which
Hmm.
I highly recommend for anybody that didn't pick up the Leviathan box set that came with the rules and the mission deck. You're really missing out if you don't have this mission deck for generating random missions,
Oh, it makes so
maps,
much easier.
deployments, all that kind of stuff. It's great. Looking at
Yeah.
the size of this deck, it almost looks a little smaller in comparison to the data sheet cards. I don't know. I mean, maybe we're just looking at different pictures, and it is just
It's hard to
we'll
say.
have to.
I'm thinking about
Well,
the deck that we have,
hmm
and I feel like it's like large playing cards. I don't feel like
yeah,
they were quite regular playing card size,
right.
but
Well,
yeah.
so anyway, I that's cool, all the new stuff there, and then they showed off the models, which
Hmm.
I think all of these we've already seen, so nothing new. They just showed them a little more detail, really close ups with. Then you can compare paint jobs from the heavy metal team to
Hmm.
what you're gonna do, which is not gonna be close. Me, the normal human, right,
Yeah,
is
us mere
not gonna be
mortals.
able to get to this point, but still, it's really cool pictures, all the new models, and it's fun to see. But Steve, I think what they've released so far for Space Marines is promising, but
Yeah,
then again, it's just more Space Marines. So,
it is.
um,
Some of it's
yeah.
just blending some old with the new.
Hmm.
The I like the jump packs. Don't get me wrong, but I mean the poses are very much like they are the current assault intercessors.
Right? Yeah.
But I like how they show the different flavors of them.
Hmm.
They go in different paint jobs, but more importantly, like the different heads, like the Raven Guard ones.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. Yeah, but like you said, it's Space Marines, and the upside is these are going to be around. I don't think you got to like just
No.
rush out and get them.
No. I and the models look great for what they are.
Hmm.
You mentioned a chapter. That's a good segue into something I really wanted to touch on, which is they got into the meat and potatoes of the
Hmm.
codex with the detachments, and that was a lot of speculation on what that would look like because I play Space Wolves, you play Dark
Hmm.
Angels. We've got a friend that has played Ultramarines before. So there's all these different chapters of Space Marines, and
Hmm.
I was very interested to see if they were going to follow suit with the Codex and provide maybe some chapter specific rules and abilities. And from what I've seen, and maybe I'm wrong, but what I've seen, they keep talking about these founding chapters and
Uh
how
huh.
pivotal they are, but there's nothing to separate a a Dark Angel, Imperial Fist, Blood Angel, Space Wolf from each other than the paint scheme so far, from what I've seen.
That's right. And I mean, to further your example, just the very first one they talk about, the first company's task force. Man, that's Deathwing for my army.
Hmm.
Because you're talking about Terminators, Stern Guard, Blade Guard, and Vanguard veterans, and they're gonna have special first company rules, which I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see at this point where they go with the divergent chapters,
Yeah.
and I almost feel like I don't. I could. I may end up with this codex. I said I wasn't, but but I mean, there's just so much in here that allows me to play models that I have already that are just really hard to fit into a Dark Angels proper
Yeah.
army right now. So
So
I'm kind of excited about that.
yeah. So let's talk about some hypotheticals here. So I've
Hmm.
got Space Wolves, which were in editions past were primarily melee. Right.
Hmm.
You put them on the back of a wolf. You Thunderwolf cavalry. You charge them into battle. They might have a little bit of shooting, but it's mostly melee and axes and storm shields and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So if I wanted to play a melee heavy army, I would take a Space Wolf army. I would
Right.
take a detachment that focused on melee and charging and things like that,
Hmm.
and play from a single codex. I wouldn't be picking chapter specific abilities. So on the plus side, I don't have to look at the detachment abilities and then flip over to another page and look at the Space Wolf abilities and then flip over to another codex and look at those abilities and go
Hmm.
back and forth, and that's just madness. That's the net positive.
Hmm.
The negative, though, I would say, is that you lose a little bit of the flavor specific to, because I could paint now. I mean, now I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
paint the Space Marines, and I could call them Space Wolves, but I could paint them whatever the heck color I want. And I could have
Right.
a full cornucopia of colors all over the tabletop, and it doesn't matter anymore.
Yes.
So I would say that's a good and a little bit sad at the same time, but mostly good, I think.
Yeah. And it's kind of neat though, because, I think we both have models from the Leviathan box. Uh, I
Yeah.
haven't really figured out what I was gonna 100% do with those Infernus Marines, the flamethrower guys.
Hmm.
But now you got a Firestorm assault force. You don't have to have flamers, but if you have a bunch of guys with assault keywords, it gives you a bunch of benefits to those weapons. So, you're not talking about melee, but you're talking about that medium range firepower. So now I'm like, man, now I've got all these. options that I don't really have with. Well, I mean, I know there's going to be some Dark Angel stuff coming out, and I'm sure there's Space
Yeah.
Wolves and Blood Angels and all that. But how's that going to look? Because what I feel like is like they've kind of generically covered that, is what I'm saying, in a good way. Like at our level of play and what we do, for me, it's almost good enough, except for the flavor and the narrative and all that stuff. But as far as these attachments go, I mean, I'll never perfect them, so it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's the point too. I think the
Mm-hmm.
point that they're trying to get across is that they want you to tell your own stories.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to figure up your own narrative, your own way of doing things. Um, and to they don't want to restrict you with the codex. They don't want to
Right.
restrict that you can't take certain units because I mean that would determine my purchase decisions as a
Correct.
Space Marine as Space Wolves player. I wasn't buying anything that was like flamers. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
never do that because I'm not going to get any benefits. But
Right.
now I am playing a Space Marine army,
Mm-hmm.
not a Space Wolves army. So, but I can paint them now in whatever colors I want, put out whatever decals I want. So I'm not for or against this. I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of interested to see what people are going to do and how this is going to play out. Um, I think you're going to have a lot of gnashing of teeth, as of course
Oh, always.
all all fans are going to have. But I think for the most part, I think any sane individual will see this as a positive.
Mm-hmm.
But there's plenty of insanity on the internet. So
I think you're creative and really tactical players
yeah,
are gonna really be able to milk this for some serious juice for a little bit. You know what I mean?
I agree. I
I think
agree.
they're gonna be able to get a lot of miles out of it.
Yeah, interested to see what kind of combos people come up with in the in tournaments and just in casual games in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm debating on picking up this codex myself. We'll see once this comes out, and maybe I'll give my Space Wolves another go. So
There
we'll
you
see.
go.
Interested to discuss more in the future. So let's now skip over to a new product release that is up for pre-order now. And I thought this was really interesting. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about it. Kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
They hadn't talked about this. That it's not like it's a glamorous product or anything that needs a big reveal, but it is any new thing from Games Workshop to me always catches my eye. This is a Stormvault Skirmish Case. When really, I guess the best way to it's just a plastic tray with some
Mm-hmm.
silicone spikes in it, and it replaces the previous Citadel Skirmish figure case, which if you've seen those, if you go to a Games Workshop store and they have these big black suitcase looking things sitting on the top of the shelf with the big handle and it says
Mm-hmm.
Citadel on the outside, that had a foam insert so that you could put your models in. I personally never got one of those,
Right.
primarily because I don't transport very much, but
Mm-hmm.
also because even if I did, I was always concerned about the foam rubbing against the paint
Sure.
and rubbing the paint off the model, even with varnish and all that kind of stuff. So this new product is going up for pre-order soon. Is replaces that, and it almost looks like a stalactite stalagmite kind of thing. It's a bunch of spikes
You're
like an
right.
Iron Maiden. That's
Yeah.
what it looks like. Like from like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Remember that?
Yeah.
Excellent Iron Maiden. So that's what it looks like. It's like you're putting your models in an Iron Maiden, and
You will tell me what I want to know.
so these are they're like they're made of
Like little
silicone.
fingers.
Yeah, which is not going to hurt the model itself. Steve, the limitation I think is just the capacity. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they show an example here where it looks like it can hold 12 Space Marines, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's a skirmish case, so maybe a really small game,
Whew.
or I guess technically you could play a combat patrol game with maybe you could take by two of these guys, but
Mm-hmm.
my guess is that these things are going to run for $30 a piece.
Yeah, they're gonna be
Um,
pretty premium because it's not cheap materials.
yeah, you think 30, $40 maybe?
I think that's a reasonable ballpark.
So I don't know. I like the idea. The
Yeah.
only concern I have, I guess, is that the plastic on the outside looks kind of cheap. If
Yeah, I
you
was
if
kind
you
of
look at
looking
the
at that.
screenshot, it
Hmm.
almost looks like a little like a painter's tray or something. It just
It
doesn't look like
does.
very high quality plastic.
No, I mean, I would expect from what they're going to charge for it, talking about maybe some knockoff like Pelican case type material,
Mm-hmm.
something a little bit more robust. I feel like the little silicone things, though, in design and execution look good. I'm not sure how practical they're really going to be. They do look like they'll keep your model pretty safe,
Yeah.
but if the plastic on the outside cracks or busts because you drop it a little bit, I don't know if that's so good. But I mean, that's just like from two pictures. It's going to be hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it'll probably be a pass for me. I'm too cheap to buy
Yeah,
these.
you just throw them in a garbage bag, right? And you
Yeah,
just tote
I,
them
well,
out
I
there.
have a cardboard box that with random foam from stuff that I've
Oh yeah,
I've
you just
hoarded.
take out the Christmas ornaments and put the miniatures
Yeah,
in,
that's right. And
and now you got
a
your transport.
bottle of super glue,
Mm-hmm.
just because
Perfect.
it's yeah.
Oh man, what was that last time you were over here? You
Oh
broke
gosh.
part of my terrain.
Oh,
You dropped two miniatures. Like what's happening
oh,
over here?
how embarrassing! I almost packed up and left.
Oh come on.
I'm
So
just kidding.
I don't
I
mind the
did. I did.
terrain. That's just battle damage.
Yeah, I think I broke two of my own guys.
I
It's
know.
like this is what is happening.
So the positive though is that even if you had this case, it wouldn't
Mhm.
have saved your models because
No,
you broke them after you got them out.
I sure did. I mean, I broke them righteously too.
So
Uh,
one of the things that I'm looking at this is this something? I know you said it's a pass for you. What looking at the design, I like that the silicone
mhm,
Iron Maiden cage that they have here. I I'm trying to think what would it take for me to really invest into something like this. I'd almost say like a some kind of built-in stacking
mhm,
system, maybe, or an interlocking system. So, and maybe that's the point. They just haven't shown it off yet. But I would like to see something like this have a stacking system on the outside, so that when if you were to buy three or four of these, or maybe in different sizes, you could keep them all locked in a box. Because I think a lot of people will take these on the airport, take them to the airport, and I can just see them thrown around by the
mhm.
TSA.
Oh my.
So, how do you? I like the fact that these are thin. They're much
Mhm.
thinner looking than that previous suitcase thing, but the suitcase held a lot more models. So,
That's true.
um, I'm a little back and forth on this. Maybe this is their push with Combat Patrol. Maybe that's what they're looking for, is to try to get this in addition, because Combat Patrol, I would assume, otherwise they wouldn't be putting so much money into it, has been very successful for them.
Yeah, I'm guessing that too. And it does say, Necromunda and Blood Bowl, Warcry, Kill
Yeah.
Team, all those smaller games anyway. Um, I'd like to see something for an option for your larger units like a Dreadnought or, because Combat Patrol, everybody's got at least like one bigger size unit that I don't
Yeah,
know if
but
would necessarily fit in these, right?
they do say here, leaving the Citadel battle figure case and Citadel Crusade figure case for your heavy duty transport.
Ah, okay. I see that now.
So
Yeah, good
it
point.
almost sounds like they want you to buy this when you're walking
Mm-hmm.
down the street to your buddy's house, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to
right.
play to play
Right.
a combat patrol game.
Yeah.
That's the point of this versus a cardboard box, But
Mm-hmm.
if you're packing up to go to a tournament with a 2,000 point army, they don't recommend buying 20 of these things, I guess, to
Yeah.
pack up your whole force. So
They would
you
let
know,
you. They'd be more than happy for you
oh,
to.
I'm sure, yes, please go buy 20. So I'm thinking this is most likely a pass for me unless
Mm-hmm.
it comes out at some bargain price, $15 or something like that, and I might consider it then.
Yeah.
But even still, this is most likely a pass for me. But
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody looks at this and says this is exactly what I want because I only play Combat Patrol, so I could buy two of these things and be good to go.
And it's new, it's different, it's innovative. So I
Hmm.
have to give a nice golf clap for that one for sure.
just a golf clap, a
Mm-hmm.
John Daly golf
A
clap.
John Daly golf clap.
Yeah, bless your two hearts. Well, let's wrap up with our final news bit here on the latest episode of apparently our favorite new show, uh, Pariah Nexus. If you are unaware, Pariah Nexus is the new show on Warhammer TV through the Warhammer Plus subscription. Still, to me, a great value. Not to everybody, but you get the free model, you get the app, the Warhammer apps where you can use those. You get the access to the back issues of the Warhammer or White Dwarf Vault, and then you get all the Warhammer TV content, which I think is cool. It's got battle reports, it's got other shows that we've talked about here on this podcast. But the latest one, Pariah Nexus, is all about Necrons, Space Marines, normal people, I guess, Astra Militarum,
Humies.
regular Humies, yeah,
Hmm.
and then Sisters of Battle. Um, but the main thing, if you haven't listened to our last show where we talked about the first episode, the animation quality, they've, to quote, one of the movies that I love, Spinal Tap, they've turned it up to 11.
I agree.
This one goes up to 11, not 10, but it's up to 11. And when I start, and again, no spoilers. So if
Right.
you're worried about spoilers, I'm not going to give any spoilers here. We're just going to talk about more just general themes. But I will say that the first quote that was just, in all the Warhammer shows, they have a little quote at the front of the episode before they actually start the animation, and I loved this quote because it just made me smile and think about, man, I just love this game so much. And the quote is, "Mercy is a word for traitors and cowards. Let all who speak it be strung up by their duplicitous tongues." Like, oh my gosh, just a hardcore.
But it's just so good because it's so ridiculous, like we've talked about
Yeah.
before. It's just such a bizarre kind of setting, but in our minds, because we're like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. That's very
Mm-hmm.
40K. I mean, I even
Mm-hmm.
apply everything in my life. I'm like, yeah, that's some real 40K stuff right there. And but I can't just say that. Like, I would love to be able to walk around and talk like that,
I mean, you
but
could.
I could, but I'd have to, find a new job. Um, Probably. And
especially in the medical profession, Steve.
yeah,
Like, if someone
yeah.
come up, Steve, please help me. Mercy is a word for traitors and
Yeah,
cowards.
exactly. What would the God Emperor say right now, huh?
Yeah, and just sit there and
Yeah.
ponder over in the corner
It doesn't
while
go so well.
they hand you a box and a pink slip and tell you to get out.
Yeah.
But what a cool line, and I thought it was really cool to start the show. I thought that this particular episode, again, no spoilers, but I thought this
Mhm.
episode did a great job of giving some backstory to Space Marines and giving a little bit of humanity to the
Yep.
Space Marines. I don't ever feel sorry, for any particular army or faction, and that's the point of Warhammer. There's no
Mhm.
good guys or bad guys. Um, but in this case, it's almost like, okay, I could get down with this. I
Mhm.
feel like the Space Marines are really trying their best, and they're still, angels of death, right?
That's right.
But and they do all this terrible stuff, which they address in the episode. But
Mhm. They do.
I just thought, I don't know about you, but I really liked the notion of giving them a little bit of humanity.
Yeah, because I mean they are created from humans. They're not they're still humans that are at some point in their life, after, either adolescence or adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
that are transformed into these beings. So they do exist as regular human beings for some amount of time. They're not just necessarily grown in a vat, per se. Though they haven't really talked about the whole Primaris thing as how that happens. But anyway,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, they were, they grow up and they farm them from worlds that make them tougher humans.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to, pass certain trials as humans to see if they're worthy to even try to become Space Marines, and then even the genetic altering may kill them. So it is pretty interesting, though. I mean, it's all stripped away, but there's still some of that there, and I think they do a good job with that.
Yeah, and I liked the fact that they showed that the size difference whenever you get to
Oh
see
yeah.
the difference between a space marine, because sometimes when I watch these shows and the space marines chunking around with their armor and their gigantic gauntlet hands and the huge pauldrons and the shoulders, and it's like, okay, come on, really, is it that?
Mm-hmm.
Every time you jump it makes this tank sound, like, give me a break. But
Mm-hmm.
then when you see them in direct comparison to a normal human being, and then you look at it like, okay, yeah, I guess that
Yeah.
would make a giant tank sound when you
Yeah,
jump off a rock.
they probably weigh what an elephant weighs.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and which what I love about these animations, and it's another, I think, regardless of whether or not you think that there's value in the
Mm-hmm.
price to value, and we've talked about that in previous episodes, but I one of the things I love about this is that it gives me a good visual to go along with my tabletop games.
Yes.
So I can imagine, and I have a pretty good imagination when I read books, but there's just something you can't fully grasp about how big or clunky
Mm-hmm.
something is. What does a bolter sound like? What does a space marine sound like when he's jumping or
Right.
hitting rocks, and how big is it in size comparison? And you can think about how it is in books, and it tells you the size difference, but to actually see it on a screen just gives you a different level of immersion to me,
Oh
and
yeah.
I thought this one did a really good job of that.
And the setting itself, the amount of destruction you see,
Yep.
the size of the buildings,
Mhm.
um, it just this you understand just how densely packed humanity is on all these planets that they're on now.
Yeah.
And then you just look at it and you think like that's like our entire contemporary Earth right now's worth of people, buildings, and structures just destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just like one little bitty planet amongst millions in this vast little 40K universe. So
Yeah,
it's very cool like that.
and it's all the gothic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and which makes me think of my terrain that I have, and some of the gothic buildings, and the terrain that I'm hoping that they're going to come out with soon, more gothic
Yeah.
buildings. But what they just have this wonderful setting, and I think they do a really good job in this show of doing that. Of course, the animation is top notch. One of the features that they show off here is I don't know how to describe it. It's like a time rewind,
Yeah.
almost like a Batman detective kind of thing, where it rewinds time and retells the story of what
Mm-hmm.
happened. I just thought that, because I was wondering after watching the first episode, are they going to do enough of a departure to make it feel like a something that's going to keep me wanting more? And I
Yeah.
thought just that alone did a good job. It's a complete change of pace into more of a mystery, find out what
Mm-hmm.
happened, detective kind of show, versus the first episode was still some of that, but more action oriented and combat. This one still had plenty of action and combat, but it was more discovery, which that time rewind feature was really cool.
Yeah, because I mean, technically, as far as the lore and stuff goes and the timeline goes, humanity is really just barely getting a hint of what the Necrons are.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've been kind of out of the picture. Like anyone who's come across them doesn't usually live to tell the story, right? So there's not a
Right.
lot of stories or information about them. And I like this, not to go off on a complete lore tangent, but comparing this show to say Angels of Death, right? So the Angels of Death, because it's a first chapter, it's the Blood Angels, and they're deeply connected. A lot of the motifs and stuff in that series is deeply connected to the Horus Heresy, which is 10,000 years before the Pariah Nexus stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
what I like about it is they're moving on. Like this new storyline is completely separated from all of that. Like any of these characters in the Pariah Nexus right now, the whole heresy stuff is things of legend. I mean, that's like it's like Arthurian legend to us, and ancient Egypt, and just things that we can't comprehend. And you only know stories about it because it's just so far in the past. And I like that they're kind of moving on with that and giving us an idea of what's happening right now, like what's happening in the 41st millennium that's not necessarily connected to the 31st millennium. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think they're doing a great job with that. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
No, it does, and I get the sense, especially in this most recent episode, where they're still trying to figure out again what the Necrons are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the first episode, it's almost like still with any Space Marine that they're not sure what it is that's getting ready to attack them, but at the same
Yeah.
time they learn so quickly and they adapt so quickly that it's like, hey, what's that? I've never seen that before. I guess I'll shoot it, you know. And
Yeah.
there's no hesitation, which I think speaks to the lethality of the Space Marines and really just about anything in the Warhammer universe, that everybody's 1 second away from taking a bolter to the head, and
That's right.
this particular show does a good job of mixing some of the crazy of the Necrons with the also the crazy and some of the nobility of the Space Marines, I thought.
Mm-hmm. And how smart they are, because it's easy to start thinking of them as a bunch of galoots that just want to Hulk smash
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yep.
But incredible, I mean, this series is showing just incredibly how smart and intelligent and in tune with their combat space and everything that's going on. Like, these guys process information so fast, um almost like a machine.
Right.
Anyway, but
Right.
it's pretty interesting that they're doing a really good job of showing that these guys make just super quick decisions, and I don't know, they're so plugged into they are a weapon, and I
Yeah.
think this series is really showing how much that is true.
Yeah, and also, based on the comment about intelligence, looking at the Necrons, where they show some Necron warriors,
Hmm.
and the difference between warriors and Illuminor Xeris and the Death Marks,
And the
there is a
destroyers.
there's a yeah, the different levels, yeah, the destroyers, the different levels of intelligence, I think, and
Hmm.
it's some of it is intelligence, some of it's just like you can tell the programming or the
Right.
instinct built into these machines are actually different. Which what's cool is that when you play them on the tabletop, you do, yeah, I don't know, by default give them a little bit of a different personality
Yeah,
based
sure.
on what their role is. And so watching a show like this, if I'm playing Necrons, I almost feel a little more, I don't know, bought into that personality of the unit
Hmm.
and the force, and I'm thinking about what I saw in the animation and what they're capable of, which was really cool to see. So, um, I'm all in. I'm interested in more.
Ain't
I
that the
I
truth?
hope I hope that they release these weekly, because I remember in the past sometimes they would skip a couple of weeks and it would take a
Yeah.
really long time. I don't know if that's the case anymore because it's been the first year of Warhammer Plus, they had to trickle in content because they just didn't have enough. I'm
Hmm.
hoping now that after a year of development that they can release these weekly. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if after this week, next week's going to be a battle report and
Yeah.
masterclass and stuff like that, and they're going to hold off on episode 3 for another week or so.
Mm. That's my
So
fear too, but it is what it is.
yeah, I mean, it just I'm not going anywhere. I've still got my
That's
subscription.
right.
So when it comes out, we'll have plenty of impressions. The good news is that those episodes are relatively short. I think this is only like less than 20 minutes, I think.
Hmm.
Which I don't mind. Most of the shows nowadays are an hour long, 30 minutes, and if you want to go binge watch anything, it's going to take you a day, depending
Yeah, it's hard to do.
on your schedule and where you are. Maybe you have a job, maybe you don't, depending on the stage of life. But still, I like that these are in bite-sized chunks and you can consume. And then even better is that you can watch them over and over again, while you're painting or reading or whatever you like to do. So looking forward to the third episode of Pariah Nexus coming up. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opinions and more fancy conspiracy theories on maybe some things. We might have to do a spoiler cast one episode where we talk about some you've shared some interesting opinions and thoughts on what might be going on. So maybe a couple more episodes and we'll do a spoiler cast, and we'll give everyone fair warning before that happens.
That's right. I think you got time to watch it yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, that'll wrap our show for this episode of Bolters and Booze. Thank you again for listening. Thank you, Medicae Steve, for your time, attention, your service. Apparently, this cocktail's gotten to me. I should have.
It's tea.
Maybe, Steve. Maybe I should have put a little more limeade in here and less of the vodka. Well, I am David the Warboss, and we will see you next time on Dadhammer. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers, David.